Okay.
And don't panic if Matthew, you don't have yours installed right now. That's fine, because I'm going to record all this and you can play back it whenever you want. Now, as I go through all this, I may mute you if there's feedback or something. Um, so how you unmute yourself is you just put your mouse over the bar wherever it's located on your screen, and you can just choose mute or unmute. Okay. And down here, this is Blackboard. If I go ahead and temporarily mute both of you. There I got. There was the feedback. When you go into Blackboard for this semester, as I understand it, they have put the orientation in place, which means you might have to go through and do the standard orientation. Hopefully, they've identified if you've used Blackboard before, and you don't have to do that. But if you do, then that's what's going on. You have to actually click through those and answer all the questions and so forth. Now, once you get into this this course, the C-sharp programming, it's not C pound. That's always presented as sharp, at least when we're talking about Microsoft. They have different flavors of that. I think there's an F sharp and used to be a J sharp. I think they did away with that. And if you click Start here, this is where you'll see the syllabus. I left it in Word format. If you don't have Word, let me know. Their big focus is to make everything ADA compliant. And some people were saying when they changed it to PDF form, it's no longer ADA compliant. So I just went ahead and left it in Word so they wouldn't holler at me. So I'd be covered that way. Let's see, my phone number's there. I think this is the first semester for a long time that said you can actually leave me a message. I had an issue with my phone for the longest time where people would leave me a message and my little red light wouldn't come on and let me know I had a message. But I have not had that issue since I've been down here at the Sumner Center in Wellington. Email, Blackboard messaging is the best way to get hold of me. If you send it to my Kali account, it may get lost in the ton of junk emails I seem to get every day. So this is the best way. Office hours, I was working on those during lunch, so I should have those finalized. But there's various times during the day when I'm available. What does that mean? Well, if you're struggling with something, then let me know, and we'll schedule a time. And you can get online via Zoom, and I can get online. You can show me your screen, and I can. It even allows me to take control, so I can sit there and show you what needs to be fixed, or the guide you. So it works out pretty good. This course is offered to teach programming skills in C-sharp to students. The basic constructs learned in this course will apply to any programming languages with slight modifications. C-sharp is an interesting language. I view it as Microsoft took C and C++ and Java and took the best of those and put into one programming language. I'm not sure if everybody would agree with that. But there's actually a new programming language out that they claim is even better, that they took the best out of everything and put it into one programming language. I don't even remember the name of it. It's some woman's name they named it. And but C# is a lot more user friendly than C++ and Java, but still it has the C background. So if you've ever programmed in a C-based language, you'll find a lot of the items in C# pretty straightforward. Upon completion of this course, you'll be able to write various programs using CSharp, using input and output, dialog boxes, selection statements, repetition, procedures, arrays. Learn how to incorporate exception handling, the different Windows components, buttons, labels, lists, text boxes, panels, menus, tab windows, list view, tree view, link label, list boxes, combo boxes, miscellaneous components. You also gain an understanding of how to work with objects. Lastly, they will know how to write and retrieve data from various sources. And as we're going along, if you have any questions, be sure to ask. I like questions. Expectations this course is that you'll attend the class in person or virtually, as you're doing. If this is not possible, because I know some people are working during the day, then you'll listen to all the YouTube lecture. What you'll find is that I may give information during the class that I don't put into an announcement. So if you don't actually listen to the YouTube lecture, you may miss a fact that I'm telling you that there's a new assignment out there, or this will be due on this date, or some other announcement. Let's see, no attendance policy, no late work. Have that down there. I will drop. Not sure how many the projects at the end of the semester, but something will come up and you won't be able to get something done and so forth. Be sure to turn something in. You'll find that if you turn in anything that's halfway correct, you'll at least get 50% of the points, if not more. So I'm not that harsh of a grader on that. Here's the textbooks. This helps prepare you to take this exam. The idea behind this kind of works together with some of the another course where you could get a certification from Microsoft if you wanted. You're responsible to have a working computer, reliable internet access, ability to install software, and be a Windows computer. Windows 7 or greater should be fine. You get much older in Windows 7, I'm guessing that Visual Studio won't work. Course grade. Programming projects are 80% of the grade. Final project is 20% of the grade. No tests in this course. For the most part, my programming classes, I like to make them project-based. You can't learn programming by definitions. You learn programming by writing programs. The more you write, the better you get. Let's see. I should tell a story. When I worked up at Coke, the KOCH, we had one individual. She came to work for Coke, and top of the line academic-wise. She knew all those definitions, had passed tests, had got, I think, a straight A average, but she could not program. So when she came to Coke, although she was a hard worker and intelligent, she hadn't taken the programming classes to develop that skill. And they let her go after a period of time. I don't remember how many weeks it was, but it was obvious that she couldn't program. And so one thing you should, if you're going into computer science, one thing that you should know when you graduate is how to write computer programs, to feel comfortable with it. That doesn't mean you're not going to have errors. You're going to see me put quite a few errors in my code. Sometimes you'll see me sit there scratching my head trying to figure out what's wrong. That's natural. But you should feel comfortable with an if statement. Maybe you don't know the general format of it. Do I need parentheses here? Do I need braces? Some cases maybe brackets. Should this be a less than with an equal after it? Maybe you don't know the exact details of the programming language, but you should know how to program an if statement, a for loop, a while loop. All those are just standard constructs you should be able to do. When I graduated, I had been programming in a programming language called Pascal, and Went to work at Koch Industries. They had me programming in COBOL, and then Visual Basic. Neither one. I took a COBOL class in Fort Scott Community College, but the instructor really didn't care very much. Just had us type programs out of the book. So I wouldn't definitely not say I was a COBOL programmer. I could type a program out of a book and get it to compile. That was about the extent of it. I don't think we made one change the entire semester. But I knew the programming constructs, and so I could pick up on new programming languages. Went to work for IFR Systems, and they had me programming in a package called Delphi. Never used it in my entire life. Never had seen that programming language. It was a strongly typed language, and I really hadn't worked with that. Visual Basic can be weakly typed. And again, I was able to do it. You should be able to pick up a new programming language with no problem if you know those constructs. I always tell people, take as many programming classes as you need to develop that comfort level. How many is that? I don't know. That's your call. It could be after one class you feel comfortable writing a while loop. If I told you to write a while loop to add the numbers from 1 to 100, for example, you should feel comfortable doing that. Okay. Let's see, extra credit, none. Ignore that tutoring available. I'd be shocked if there's any tutors available at the main campus for this course. Again, if you have difficulty, contact me. We'll set up a Zoom meeting. I'm not going to sit there and read all of this. We won't use the book initially. We're going to spend the first 4 weeks focusing on fundamentals. And then at that point, we'll start getting into the topics in the books. Topics in the book kind of ignore the fundamentals. They kind of jump in pretty heavily in some of the more advanced topics, which isn't bad, but you do need to have that proper fundamentals. So I figured about 4 weeks would be about right for that. Are there any questions on anything on the syllabus? Okay. Under course content.
Wait 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
I had myself muted. It's my bad. I noticed that it said you had no extra credit work.
Right.
Okay. I was just making sure that was correct.
Right. For the most part, people don't need that. Because if you're not getting your program to work correctly, if you contact me, even if it's past the due date, I'm pretty flexible about that if I know you're working on it. If I just don't hear from you, then I'm not very flexible on that. But if I'm working with you trying to figure out what's going on with your program, because sometimes it takes me a while to figure these out. I've had people email me a program, and I'm sitting there scratching my head, and it takes me forever to figure out what's going on with it. I think sometimes, like one of the popular programming mistakes is to program something like while count is greater than 300, like this. And after you've done it for the first time, you probably won't ever do it again. And you say count is equal to count plus 1, and maybe you print off count or whatever. And it doesn't work. And you sit there and you look at it and you look at it, and it's like, well, why isn't this working? You can't have a semicolon after a while statement like that. The good programming languages will give you an error on that. The bad ones will let you do that, and you're sitting there scratching your head for hours trying to figure out what's going on with that. Now, in a programming class, you get this, and you say, well, I'll go ahead and turn it in anyway. That's a minor issue. In real life, you have to figure out what's going on with it. So you don't really have a choice. Now we'll look at some debugging tools that help you figure out how to proceed with that. There was one time working at IFR, I was setting up the intranet forum, and I'd set up an Apache server, and on what was it? Free BSD, I think it was. It was a Unix, now called Linux, server, and I couldn't get the extensions to work for the web package we're using. The front page is what it was back then. I think I spent a week on it trying to figure out that silly problem. And I realized I could probably spend a year on it and still not know the answer, but it had to be done. And so I finally went to my boss. I was about begging at that point. I said, please let me call Microsoft, and have them figure it out. And she relented, even though it cost money. It was like $100, I think, to call Microsoft back then. And they're good. They had me fixed probably in about 20 minutes. Probably another 20 minutes where they answered a bunch of questions I had. But it was just, it's amazing how one little issue can stop your program. Now out here, this one's under course content. You'll see a Zoom link. And so if you're at home, and now obviously you two have found it, but if you're at home and you want to connect to the meeting, you just click here. It'll walk you through. It'll install a little program, and you can listen. You can interact. You can ask questions, and so forth. Now under here is the software installation. So if you click that, we'll be using the Visual Studio community. If you click that, I'll take you to that link. I would probably go pretty much with the defaults on it, so whatever comes up. You probably have to create a Microsoft account, if I'm guessing right, for this. At least I did when I installed it on all the laptops here in Wellington.
If you have a Google account, you should also have a Microsoft account, so you can pretty much use them interchangeably.
Oh, okay, good. And then you'll see these appear as weeks go by. After I get done recording this, then I'll upload a YouTube video, and you'll see them out here. So if you need to hear it again, you need to see something again, then it'll be available. And that's under each week is also where you'll actually see the projects. So as we finish something and I assign something, I'll put a Dropbox out here. Now, to show you what Visual Studio looks like. I have no clue what it'll look like on your end when it comes up, but you may have Windows over here. Now you may have you will have a start page. That says for certain here in the middle. We're going to talk about how to configure this and get it to look however you want. So if yours doesn't look like this, no big deal. I don't like how this looks anyway, so I'm going to redo it as I go through it. Now, by default, it should install CSharp, so you should be up and running in that regard. There is a bunch of other packages you could install. Let's see, where's it at? Tools, get tools and features. By default, I went through and installed everything to begin with. Then I realized that wasn't a good thing and had to back off. These are if you want anything additional beyond standard CSharp. Like I said, the standard CSharp should already be set up and installed after you run that installer program. Running that installer program is probably the hardest part of the course, I think. In some cases, it's just installed just as easy. I could not believe it. I have one desktop at home that I cannot get Visual Studio to work on. No matter what I've tried, I've never been able to get Visual Studio to work on it. Latest thing it wants me to do is it wants me to reset all my permissions on the computer. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to take that big of a leap. So I got other computers at home when I'm running Visual Studio. But again, sometimes that's the most challenging part. It isn't like a standard package. It takes over part of your computer at times. When I say it takes over part of your computer, originally I had installed the Python development here. And when I did that, I could no longer use Anaconda properly for Python. It would not let me do the installs of new software through Anaconda. So it took over. But these are the ones I have installed just for the different classes. Like I say, you don't need to set any of this. By default, this .NET desktop development should be checked, and that's what gives you your C#. Okay, so when this first comes up, like I say, you have different windows here. You got Solution Explorer, mine's Toolbox, and so forth. If you don't have these, like for example, if I click the X here to close those, you have nothing over here. Under View is where everything's located at. This is how you bring these windows back up. For example, if I click View Toolbox, you can see also there's a Control-Alt-X. That'll bring that back up. Now these right here have something that looks like a little push pin up here. And if you click that, that auto hides. And so when you put your mouse over it, I guess you have to click it, it'll appear again. And you click over here and it'll hide. So if you got little screen space, you probably don't want those showing all the time. To get it to appear and stay there, you just click this push pin again, and that pins it in place. Toolbox is a pretty good one to have when you're doing Windows development because you use these quite a bit. Let's see. Trying to see if any of them show to begin with. No. Now, to begin with, they don't look like they're doing anything. And neither did that Solution Explorer. If I did a View Solution Explorer, you see it doesn't show anything. It doesn't let me do anything. That's because I haven't done anything yet. I haven't created a program. You'll see these will change as time goes on. You can actually click this title bar here and drag it and drop it in different locations. And you see there's these little places here to drop it as. So if you want to play with that, you can. Usually I don't have very many of those open. I have the Toolbox and I like Properties. Over here on the right side, you have more. Has Team Explorer and Class View, which I really never use. Or don't use often, I should say. So I can close those. Okay, so that just talks a little bit about configuring your environment here. If you do a File, New project, come over here, it may be defaulted to Visual C#. It's hard to say. Sometimes when you first bring it up, it'll ask you what kind of configuration you want. And so it'll set this up so it'll always come up to C# or something else. If you collapse this, you see there's other ones. I can come down to Visual F# and I could create a program. You see there's a C++, Visual Basic. I'm not sure if you'll have, I think you have those 4, but you probably don't have any of the rest of these if you just go with the default. But again, if C# isn't showing, you can expand that, and these are all the different types of C# programs you can create. If you click just the Visual C#, it'll put everything in one big list, or you can click these individually over here and narrow down. Like if I click Windows Desktop, it brings up just the items that are specific to Windows Desktop. Okay. Now here's a Windows Form app. I'll go ahead and choose this one. And I'm really bad about not giving these meaningful names. And as we get into demonstrating more programming concepts, then I'll actually put meaningful names out there. Windows Form app 2 doesn't help you very much. Very important, the location. You see there's users, Kali, instructor, sources, repos. This is a repository for source files. And you can change it to a different location if you want, and that's fine. Then you see you got your solution name down here, which matches the name there. And .NET Framework I never really change. But if you're trying to deliver a solution to somebody that had the older framework, you could choose that. You might say, well, why would somebody have an older framework? They might have an older framework because maybe the newer framework doesn't support a certain feature. It got a bug in it or something. This location is important because these are all the meaningful names that I've chose over the time. You see it creates folders for these. So if I were to go ahead and create that, I'd create a folder. This is what you're going to be able to, you'll have to access this to turn it in. And we'll talk more about that after we create an example. Okay, so I got Windows Form app created here. And I'm going to give it a halfway meaningful name, Hello World. Now, I typically don't put spaces in here. I don't put weird characters. But if I want what looks like a space there, I put an underscore. That is not saying it won't take a space. But I've been burnt too many times by packages that if I put a space there, it just doesn't work. You think those days are gone when they would tell you that it doesn't work, but I last semester was using Android Studio, and there's a place where you can leave a space there, and it doesn't give you an error; it just doesn't work. So I tend not to put any spaces in my names. Okay, after I type in a name there, I can click OK. Grab a drink here. And thought I did that earlier. I must not set it to. I think everything will be large enough you can see it anyway. Brings up here a form. You see these little white squares around it. You put your mouse on it. It becomes an arrow of some sort. You can click and hold down your left mouse button, and you can resize it. By default over here, you notice that there's a properties. Some of the items that you can control with your mouse over here, you can also type in values over here. You see there's a size down here. And we'll talk more about how can you change the size to differently than hard coding values like that. Like I say, the toolbox here now has changed. It has different items we can use. And I didn't have properties shown before, but here's properties. Again, if you lose properties, if you come up here and you do view, properties is here somewhere. I think it's under other windows, but let me see. Probably looking right at it. Oh, there it is. Properties window. Sometimes when I lose a properties window and I can't find it, if you right click, you can bring up the properties window quickly in that manner. Okay, so this is our Windows program we're writing. So this is kind of the background. Over here are different items you can drop on there. For example, if I drop a button on here, you can double click this button. It'll add a button on there, and I'm going to resize it so you can see it a little bit better. And you notice I put my mouse in the middle of it. It becomes 4 arrows. I click and hold down and drag it. I would suggest you come in here and play. You can't mess anything up. Just drop these on here and see what all you can do. There's a text box here somewhere. There's also a label. If I double click label, comes up there. I'm just moving those around. I thought I could resize that. Huh, interesting. Maybe that's just a text box. All of these have properties that are specific to them. For example, if I wanted to make this a different font so I could see a little bit better, I could come over here and I just have to search. You see there's a font choice here, and I could type in 16. I could change it to a different font name. The drop down. Himalaya. Now it says label 1. If you come over here, if you search somewhere, you'll find where label 1 specified. See, this is my answer. You notice it automatically resized that. The button says button 1. If I come over here, you see there was one that says text. I could change that. I would say click me. I could change the font again. Make it bold. You see there's a lot of different options here. We're not going to go through every option over here for properties. For the most part, as a computer programmer, if you develop a Windows application, you do not need to know all of these. You know, maybe you use the most common ones. So maybe there might be 5 that you use the most. Some packages allow you to only see the most common ones. Like you see over here, it says common controls. There's all Windows forms here, and then down here is a lot of other options. These are the most common ones people use. Okay, so if I'm going to program this click me to put something in this blank. And that'll be your first project. Just a hello world program. Basically just copying what you're seeing me do. What this does is it shows me that you have installed Visual Studio correctly, and you can actually run a program. And that's kind of the first step, is make sure everybody has their software installed. Now, if I click this label here, you want to make sure you just click it one time, not twice. You see up here at top under Properties, it says Label 1, System, Windows Form Label. If I scroll up to the top, you see there's a alphabetical option here, and then there's a categorized option. So you can choose these to choose different ways of viewing these properties. There's alphabetical. I like alphabetical sometimes because I'm trying to locate name, and I have a hard time remembering where in the world name is stored at when I go into the categories. If I search down, there it is. It's under design. It's called name. It's called label 1. But again, you can choose alphabetical, and name is always at the top. Now, it's called label 1. Maybe I want that to be my answer blank. Notice I use a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters. You don't have to. It can all be lowercase. It can be all uppercase. You can use underscores. I don't think you can use spaces. I'd be shocked if it allows you. Yeah, it says property value is not valid. That's okay. Puts it back to without spaces there. So I've given that a name. Now I want to write something to this, and to do that I need to access this name. Now this click me here, I'm going to double click it now. It brings up a new tab up here. we now have our design tab is right here, and then we got one that says form1.cs. The form1.cs is where my code is. And it puts all this in here for you, so you don't need to worry about this. It says private void button 1 underscore click. What it did is it brought up a default template for the most common programming option I would want to do. In this case, to click a button. There's lots of other things you can do with a button. If your mouse hovers over a button, you could have it change. You could program. I don't think I've ever actually programmed dropping a button somewhere, but you could grab the button, drop it somewhere else on your screen if you need be. But a lot of different things you can do. To go back to your design, you simply click the tab up here. And to go back to your code, you can click the tab there. Sometimes if you double click something by accident, like you double click the label, just as long as you don't put any code there, you're fine. So you don't need to worry about cleaning it up. View Solution Explorer. You see a Solution Explorer over here. I have the files. Sometimes you close these by accident. Like I'm over here and I got the code and I mean to go back here to the go back to the design. This is where I mean to go, and I click that X by accident, and it's like, well, how in the world do I get back there now? What I do is I come over here and I go into the Solution Explorer. I don't normally keep this up and running, although you can have these on top of each other. And if I double click Form 1, it'll bring up my design again. If you're not sure which one it is, you just start double clicking and you'll see which one's the correct one. Okay, I'm going to shut down the Solution Explorer there. And I go back to my code. Now this is from a programming standpoint, this is where we're telling the program what to do. In this case, we want to have this say hello world. Now remember the name of this. This is called my answer blank. So over here, I'm going to type my answer. Now as you start typing, you'll notice that it comes up with these drop-down options called code completion. Once you get used to these are fantastic. If you got a bad memory like me, you don't remember what in the world you called it. Then this pops up. And once that pops up and it's highlighted, you just simply press your tab and it'll do a completion on that. Now I do a dot and I start typing text. And again, that window pops up with all the different options for our completion. And once I get text, I can then do a tab. A lot of programming is case sensitive, so lowercase t may give you an error here. That's why using the code completion is your best idea. And I'll type hello world, and then I'll put a semicolon there. My answer blank. That's what I called this. Remember the name of it was my answer blank. Then I said my answer blank dot text. Over here, especially if you have the alphabetical chose, you can see the text down here. So when I say my answer blank, it's coming over here, it's knowing this one because of that name. And when I say dot text, it's altering this option right here. I'll talk more about these quotes and so forth here in a minute. But let's run this and just see what it looks like. So if I click the start here, comes up, Got my click me. This is my answer. If I click the click me, you see it changes that to hello world. Now, I will put a Dropbox out there for the hello world, but that's the first thing I want you to create. I'm going to show you some additional items now that you don't have to put into your hello world. I just want to expand upon it just so we understand more of what these topics are doing. Okay, so if I go back to my design here, you can have more than one button. Now, I double-click this button to add this on here, but you can click this, see how it's highlighted, and now click and drag, and you can drop it over here. And then I'm going to resize that. Now, you may have noticed as I was putting that on there that some little lines would appear. The idea is that it's trying to give you these lines so you can line it up so it looks good. Say this was bigger, like that. If I drop it down here, see how it left the lines? So it's lined up perfectly. If I could do that, I could right align it here. If you got a button where you're trying to make them the same size and everything manually, like I'm doing, what you do is you line up like the top, like that. You click in this white square down here. You click and hold down your left mouse button, and you bring it up until you see a line appear. And then you know they're exactly the same size. I could then move it down here until they left the line. And then I could grab the right side and move it until they're lined up like that. Now we're going to see there's other ways of doing that besides what I'm showing you. This just gets you used to the interface. You can actually choose multiple controls and change them at the same time. Okay, so on this one's, see the name of that is button 2. If I click this one, it's button 1, and this one is still my answer blank. Now, I like to come up with some kind of standard for my naming. I don't like my answer blank. So let me come down here. Where's the name at? It's up top. And this is kind of your choice on a convention. You go to work at a place, they'll tell you a convention to use. But maybe I'll call this one TB underscore answer blank. And you see over here it says text box, TB for text box. This one is a label. So maybe I want LB instead of TB. Let me change it to LB. Let me drop on a text box. I swear I used to be able to resize those right there. No memory. You notice this one's called text box 1. Maybe I want to call it TB underscore answer. Well, what's the benefit of this? By the way, I broke my code. I don't think it automatically changed it. I could be wrong. But I renamed this one. So if I double click me, I did change it. Look at that. Visual Studio getting smarter by the day. I figured it'd break the code when I did that. Now, if I want to put code behind this button, again, I can double click it if I wanted to. If I click it one time, then over here you see there's a little lightning bolt. These are all the different things I could program. Auto size changed, basic back color changed, background image changed, or background image layout changed. Change user interface, client size changed, dock changed, drag drop. I think the only thing I've ever programmed in a button is click. But you can see there's a lot of different options here. If you're going to program the next Microsoft Excel, You would probably want to program most of these. But typically, for a standard company, you're writing a Windows package, you don't need to sit there and program 50 events. It'll take you forever. So that's why when you double click this, it comes up with the most popular one, because that's what people use the most. But over here, you see there's a click, and I could double click over here. I don't know if I can do this drop down. I guess I could. Oh no, that's a button one click. That'll set the same code as what we did over here. So if I come over here and double click that, that's another way of bringing in that code. Probably the only time we'll use that much in this class is if we're going to program something besides the default. Most of the times we go with the default action. Okay, now I have no clue what I named that text box. No memory. That's okay. That's why if you come up with a naming convention, it makes your life a lot easier. Because if I start typing TB underscore, if I name all my text boxes as TB underscore, it'll pop up with a list of them. So then I can choose which one I want. That's why it's beneficial to come up with a naming convention. Don't use some random name. Doesn't matter what you use. LB for labels, TB for text boxes. Buttons, probably. You don't need to come up with a naming convention. Most people don't change anything on a button within code. They program the click on it. But then again, you might want to give it a meaningful name, because if you're looking at the code and you're saying, what in the world is button 1? No, what button 2? Maybe you want to give those meaningful names. Okay, TB, and you see underscore answers highlighted, so I'll do a tab. And I can program text again. Notice that I got lowercase here now. Do a space, and it changed it to uppercase. And this is a text box. Or no, have a great day. Okay, so now if I run this, click the start here. Also, for the start, if you do debug, you see there's some different options up here. And we'll eventually talk about what all these debugging options are. So if I click this option, changes that. If I click that, it'll change that. Grab a drink here. We'll talk about all these options eventually. I went out of town last week, 2 weeks ago, and I took 4 books with me. I took 2 laptops, took my clothes. I took a minimal amount of items. I could have took my PlayStation, just in case I had time to play with it. Could have took a lot of different options. What we do is when you pack for a trip, you try to take as little as possible. When you're writing a computer program, you try to take as little as possible. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, up here, you see it says using. These are all the different code segments that it can bring in. The idea on this is that it's bringing in just what it needs. What that does is it keeps your program small, so it runs fast. You could bring everything in, but like taking a trip, if you take everything, you're going to be packing forever. You have to probably take a moving vehicle when you go on vacation. So if you don't have something that you need, you have to add your own statement up here. Sometimes it adds it for you. Now, some of these I'm kind of surprised that they throw in here by default, because I don't think you need all of this based upon what we've been doing. Now, how you type a new item is you come up here, you do an enter there, and you can start typing using system dot, and you see all the different items we could bring in. Like if I want to program something using XML, I could choose that. Media. If I want to play a video or play music in my application, guessing this is what you'd use. I don't have these all memorized. Most programmers don't. They have their standard ones memorized. Want to do deployment, choose that, globalization, so forth. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. By the way, there isn't just system. There's other items you could type here to bring that up. Now, these are little pieces of code that somebody else has written to make your life easier. So they're already written how to handle clicking a button. So you don't have to sit there and program that completely from scratch. Somebody else has already done that. All you have to do is put the code inside. We get down to here. This is the start of our code. Notice that hello world matches what we named it as. And then this form1.cs, that's the name of that form. If I give it a different name, and you'll see the name change here. Public. If I ask you what your social security number was, you'd probably tell me it's none of my business. That's private to you. There's information that's public. Same principle applies here. When we declare something as public, you can access it a little bit further out, a little bit more global. When you declare something as private, that means you can only access it from within that code right there. You notice down here, these button ones are, say, private. You don't have to worry about that overly. It just puts private and public there for you. When we get to objects, and we'll explore that further. But private means that if I had two screens, to click that button, I'd have to be on this particular screen, this form. Can't be over in this form. So it's private. It's unique to this one place. You notice these braces here. Here's a beginning brace, and then a little line going down here, and you see the closing brace. In programming, not just in CSharp, but in programming in general, if you have a beginning delimiter of some sort, like a beginning brace, you have to have a closing brace. This is a real common place where people mess up their program. They'll come down here and by accident, they'll delete a couple of those braces. And then they think, okay, code's all right, everything's perfect, I've done everything he did in class. They go click start. Says there was errors. It says, would you like to continue to run the last successful build? Never say yes, sir. I'm not even sure why they put this here. Because you're made changes, and that's one you want to focus on. Why you want to run the last time it actually ran good, I don't know. So you always want to say no there. Sometimes it gives you meaningful errors. Sometimes they don't mean anything. This one's not too bad. See how it says, oh, okay, you get a closing brace expected here. And if you double click that, it'll go down to where the code is. You even see a little red squiggly. Red squiggly means you've screwed up in some way. Now, it's fantastic how CSharp lines these up. Because then you see that, okay, this one here, there's the little dashes here. There's no dashes going down. So I'll come down here, press enter, and I put my closing curly bracket, and press enter again. You see how it puts the dashes there. So you see that one lines up with this one. And this one here doesn't have one, so I'll do another closing curly bracket. You can see it even redoes the tab position so that it'll be lined up correctly. Okay. We'll talk about class later on and so forth. This right here, you can probably guess what it's going to do. Initializes the components, builds our form, so forth. For the most part, you don't want to mess with this. If you mess with this, probably break the program. This just allows us to put code segments in different places. Okay, so private void. Void is empty of something. In programming, void means nothing's returned. For example, if I tell my son, he puts a pop in the refrigerator for me last night. I say, go put pop in the refrigerator. He grabs a 6-pack. He goes and puts it in the refrigerator so it'll be cold so I can drink it during class. He doesn't come back. Nothing's returned. On the other hand, if I tell him, say, hey, go ask your mother what the plans are for this weekend. He goes, he asks her, and he comes back and he tells me. He returns something. That's what this is. Public void means nothing's returned. We go off, we click the button, we do the code, we're done. Now, that doesn't mean it won't actually change something on your form. It just doesn't return anything back to the main code here. And we'll see how we can change different values of this to be to return something. Button one click. Again, you don't want to change any of this. Object sender. These are parameters, and they're based upon what we created over in our form. Now you'll get used to this eventually. When you put your mouse over something, these windows keep popping up. These code completion. You actually learn to love those, and you hate it when you go to a programming language that doesn't have those. See, it comes up here, tells me it's a label form, tells me what text is, tells me what this is. All code, I shouldn't say all, but most code has a semicolon at the end. I mentioned earlier you don't want to do that with a while loop, but most code will have this here. If you don't have it there, you see it puts a little red squiggly, and it pretty well tells you you need one there. You see the quick actions over here. You can do the drop down, use expression body for methods. I just put a semicolon there. Not sure if it would actually fix that or not. You can have more than one line of code here if necessary. Is there any questions so far on any of that?
In here.
Okay. I'm going to write a program to add two numbers together. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. You see these two little diskettes here. You can click that. I'll save all. And then I'll do a file close solution. Now, before I go on to that, let's examine what in the world I just did. I come over here to that directory where that's at. And you see there's now one that says Hello World. If I double click that and go into it, you see there's a hello world.sln. A lot of people will turn in this .sln file for their project, and that doesn't tell me anything. It's kind of a placeholder. It tells what's in the solution. It tells the files and so forth. Really nothing I can run. Then there's another folder here. If I double click that, sometimes you'll see your source code here. Program.cs, form1.cs. See this properties. I can double click properties. Comes into this. Object, debug, bunch of different items here. Some of this we'll talk about, some of them we won't. Bin, debug, and here's hello world.exe. You may not see these extensions here. If you don't see those extensions and you're in Windows 10, view. If I come to view, you see there's a file name extensions. As a computer programmer, you want this turned on. So if you got a different operating system, if you Google File Explorer, turn on file name extensions, you always want that showing. Because as a computer programmer, we want to know what kind of files these are. Now, granted, if you have that shut off, yeah, I guess I did shut them off. Some of these still have a dot on them. You can look over here and see the type, but we like the additional visual so we can see what file it is. That's bizarre. This one still says .pdb. Strange. These extensions here on the end, these tell what kind of file it is. And so this tells the Windows operating system that this is an executable. This is an application, an app we can run. PDB tells us this is a program debug database, whatever that is. This tells us this is an XML configuration file. Okay, going back, clear back to here. How you submit your project. Yes, don't go into the folder. You want to be back here at the main directory. You right click, and then you want to send to. There it is. Send to compress a zip folder. Of course, I don't have permission. That's nice. But anyway, I should work on your computer. I should have permission in my own folder here. Sure not. File not found or no read permission. Oh well. But that's how you create the zip file. If you have trouble, let me know on that. Oops. I'll have to create a folder for next time and start saving my files in there. I expect to have something to do with that repository for the sources. But that zip file is what I use to grade. Okay, so I'm going to do another file new and choose project. And I'm going to drop it, let me do a browse, and I'll drop it on my desktop. I'm bound to have access to that. Assuming I can see my desktop. How about documents? I'll drop it in my documents. And I'll call this add it. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Obviously, I'm not a very imaginative person. How about add it to? There we go. I already had a file there, or a folder there named added. Okay, so I'm going to drop on a label. I'll double click that, double click another one. I'll drop on 2 text boxes. I'll drop on another label, and another label, and a button. You have to decide when you're designing your application what you want it to look like. Now I'm going to add two numbers together here. So I got my 2 numbers up here. See, this is where you need to have that comfort level down and moving things around and getting it to look like you want. This label 1 here, I'm going to come over to my properties. Remember the text. And I want it to say number 1. And this one, come over here. And number 2. Now I want to give these meaningful names. So I'm going to click this first text box here. And I want to come up to my name. And I don't want to call text box 2. I want to call it TB_num1. This one I'll call TB_num2. Now again, you can call those whatever names you want. But they should be something that you can easily remember, easily access within your program. Now here, I want that to say, so I'm going to change text. Text is how you get to change what it's going to say on the screen. And I'll have it say add. Now this is where I'm going to put my answer at. So for this label 4, I want to change what it reads, such that it says sum. This one I'll move it around a little bit to get it lined up. And yeah, I don't want to show. There's tools to help you line these up, but I'll show that eventually. Now, originally it says label 3. That's probably not very meaningful. I'll say 0. You can even put blank there. And I want to give it a name. This is going to be my answer. So this will be LB underscore answer. And then I can move this over like here. Look a little bit better. This says form 1. You can change the title of this. So if you have the main form selected here, if you come over here to text, I call it the summit screen. Now, those a little bit too far to the left, I can come up here and click in this gray area and hold down my left mouse button and drag, and it'll draw a little rectangle. When you let up, it selects everything inside that rectangle, so you can move them all at once. I can't remember what Visual Studio calls that. Some programming languages call it a corral type of selection. Some call it lasso. Like I say, I don't remember the name of this. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my code. The idea is the user is going to input numbers in these first 2 blanks. They'll click this button. My program will add it together and put the result here. Okay, so remember this is called TB underscore num1, TB underscore num2, and this one's called LB underscore answer. So I double click the add, and I'll come here, and I'm going to say int num1, num2, and my answer, ANS. Now notice a little green squigglies under here now. Green squigglies means that, well, it's not an error, but you haven't done anything with it. That's okay. Ignore the green squigglies, they'll go away. Now I want to bring in my first text box. So I'm going to say num1 is equal to int32 dot parse beginning parentheses tb underscore num1 dot text. Num2 is equal to int32 dot parse tb underscore num2 dot text. Answer is equal to num1 plus num2. And then I want to write that back out to my screen. So I'm going to say lb underscore answer dot text is equal to answer dot toString. Now first let's run this, and then I'll explain what each of these items is doing. Okay, I'm going to click up here, num1, put a 3 there, put a 4 here, I click add. Adds them together and gives me 7. So just adds them together, and it's working. Although my tabs aren't in the right order, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. Now here, we're going to talk a lot more about data types next time, so don't be overwhelmed at this point. All this, we're going to go into a lot more detail. INT means integer. Integer is a number with no decimals. So you have to declare it. Think about how your brain works. If I give you a number, 53, well, if I ask you immediately now, what's a number? You'll say 53. So what your body did, brain did, or whatever, it took that 53, it set aside a brain cell, and it said it's a number, and it stored that number in there. Then when I asked you what that number was, you went and you retrieved that number and gave it to me. That's the idea behind variables. This is memory cells for the computer program. So we're declaring one called num1, num2, answer. If I ask you how old you are, you probably know what it is. So the name of the information that's being stored is associated with the actual value. If I ask you how old your parent is, you'd probably be able to tell me, so forth. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly how the brain works, but that's the idea here. Notice these have commas between them. And then my last line ends with a semicolon. So again, integer means a number with no decimals. Now, here we're setting num1 equal. This is an assignment statement. It's not an equals like college algebra. We're going to talk more about that next time. But this retrieves the value that's in TB underscore num1. That's our text box we created. Now, it comes in as what's called a string. A string is not a number. It can have alphanumeric characters like A, B, C. So we can't automatically assign that to an integer. Because if I have the number 53, can I take the name David and put it in where that 53 was? No, that doesn't work. So we have to convert it. And that's what this int32.parse is doing. Is this taking this string here and it's converting it to an integer, a number with no decimals. The 32, there's different integer types, and it refers to how large of a number can you store in it. And I just chose 32 to begin with. Same thing, and again, it ends with semicolon. Notice it has a beginning parentheses, has to have a closing parentheses. Num2, we do the same thing. We convert the value of those in TB underscore num2 and assign it to num2. Then down here, we're going to have answer is equal to num1 plus num2. And again, you cannot think of this in terms of algebra. What this is doing is retrieving the value of num1, num2, bring those back, adding them, and then assigning it to answer. And then we write out our answer. LB underscore answer is our label, and dot text, that's a string. Now we can't put a number directly into a string, so here I do answer dot, and I do a toString, and that converts the integer to a string and assigns it. Now, like I say, if you've never programmed before, this will seem a little bit confusing, but we're going to go into a lot of detail on this, so don't stress about that. I'm just trying to show you what like an average program is. Well, not an average program, but average beginning program. This is a type of thing, no matter what programming language you throw at me, I should be able to sit down. I might have to Google how in the world do I convert this to a integer. I might have to Google how to convert this to a string. But the same principles of programming, I should be able to apply to any language. I'll go ahead and save that. And now I'm curious, since I saved it to my documents, if I'll be able to actually do anything with it. So let's see. Here's added to. Let me right click on that and choose send to compressed zip folder. That is interesting. File not found or no read permission. I'm almost 100% certain that you'll have no problem with that on your computer at home. Not sure why it's giving it to me here. I know they set some permissions on the laptops here, and I've had troubles in the past with some of this, but I'm shocked that it's doing it in documents. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I better go home and go to sleep. I had the file open. So I'll right click on that and say send to compressed zip folder. File not found or no read permission. That's just great. I got that closed. Let me just close this completely. And try one more time. There it goes. That's what I should do. Must have still had something open on Visual Studio when I was trying to do that. This is what you turn in. This contains everything. This is a file I can actually grade because it not only has an SLN file, it has all the supporting files that go along with it. Like I say, I'll put a Dropbox out here for the Hello World. Let me show you what it'll look like, actually. Let's see. Assignment. Project. Week 101. Hello World. Let's see. Make the due date on that this Sunday night. 50 points. And have it display until Sunday night. Okay. So when you get to Hello World done, you'll go in here, you'll submit it, and then that'll be it. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there.